Hey, this is Trent Rush. Welcome to the Under the Halo podcast. We're throwing it back this week with Angels legend Tim Salmon, the 2002 World Series champion. We'll go all into that 2002 World Series run. Great stories. You don't want to miss those. We'll talk about his 1992 Rookie of the Year campaign and really how Tim Salmon became the Kingfish and Mr. Angel for so long in his Angels career, and now doing a great job in the broadcast booth as well for Bally Sports West. This is one of the most fun conversations we've had yet. I think you're going to love it. Here now is our chat with Tim Salmon. Fish, this is a special place. We're not just being at Angel Stadium, but being here in the Autry suite. This is cool. We're going to get into a bunch of this stuff. I would love to know, what do you remember about that time playing for Gene Autry and the Singing Cowboy and those days of the old Angels?
Yeah, well, I'm looking over here at the picture of Bobby Knopp when he actually played for Gene Autry. I think you have to go back to the late 80s is when I got drafted, and there was a lot of history around. I mean, Bobby Knopp, Bob Clear, Babalu, I'm blanking on all the different names, but it just seemed like there was a lot more history of the old timers, the guys that, were roommates with Babe Ruth, the guys that were there with Mr. Autry, when the team started out. My first manager was Bob Rogers, so it didn't seem, although it was quite a few years before me that, it was 20 plus years before me that the team had started, but there were still enough people around that you had that connection point. And when Mr. Autry was here, I mean, you talk about walking in a room and commanding, in a commanding presence. I mean, it was pretty special. So yeah, sitting here in this room and looking at all the pictures of the teams that he, was a part of, in a sense of when he was owning it, and it's pretty special.
That's what's so unique. I think about your career, and obviously what you're doing now, still very much involved, very much a part of Angels baseball. But I think about how many generations that you have been you've touched. I mean, part of that run in the 80s, coming up through the 90s, into the World Series, and all through the run in the 2000s where you guys won 900 games that decade. Let's go back to maybe some of the early days when you first joined the organization, having been someone that I know you didn't go to a whole lot of Major League Baseball games as a kid, and then all of a sudden you end up in the show, and here you are under the bright lights, making the debut at Yankee Stadium. What was that like?
Yeah, growing up in Phoenix, I played a lot of baseball, but we didn't have a team. I think it was the Phoenix Giants, the AAA club, and I went to a few games, but I was out playing some kind of sport most of the time. So we, even if there was a major league team, would I have gone? Maybe not. I mean, we didn't have the means necessarily, but yeah, we, you played a lot, and I think I have to go back to it's Angel Radio, I get it, but I did live in Long Beach early part, first, second, third grade, and that was in the mid-'70s when the Dodgers were everything. So I did have this fascination with Major League Baseball, but it was pretty much the only team that mattered or existed were the Dodgers, right? But then I go to Arizona, and I'm continuing to play, and then it became the Cubs and the Atlanta Braves. So I really had no concept of who the Angels were at all. And I remember my mom, because we lived in Long Beach, my aunt lived out in Yorba Linda, and she's like, oh yeah, we'd always pass by the stadium. And I'm like, I must have thought the Dodgers played there. I never realized that, I never knew anything about the Angels. And even when I, through my amateur career, I got drafted out of college, I think every team out there courted me. I was supposed to be a first-round pick. Every team out there courted me, but the Angels. I had a stack of business cards this thick, and I think I had one Angel card in there. The rest were every other organization. So, and even when I got drafted, they were, the Angels were never even a mention. You could mention 20 teams that were thinking about taking me. The Angels were never one of them. So all of a sudden, when I find out I get drafted by the Angels, it was just like, where did that come from? Yeah. I mean, it came out of nowhere, and I dropped in the third round. So, but I was really disappointed. But you know what? You look back in hindsight and you're like, man, it just was laid out perfectly. I mean, spring training at home, out here in Southern Cal where I grew up, and really an organization at the time who Joe Madden was really he orchestrated that whole minor league system and all the great players that came up at that time. The Angels just really had an amazing minor league system for a young player to come up in. And so I look back and I was so blessed. I mean, the team that I never knew existed were the ones that drafted me and gave me this opportunity.
Let's talk about your debut for a moment.
Yeah.
There's a video that's been going around. I just saw it a couple of weeks ago where you are making the debut at Yankee Stadium, of all places, to do it there. Can you just tell me, like, what you remember about that day?
Yeah, I was having a fantastic year in AAA. There was a chance I was going to win the Triple Crown for the minor leagues. And if it wasn't for that, I think I would have been called up much earlier. That was at the end. I mean, I think there was like 5 games left in the AAA season or something or a week left. Mm-hmm. And so they were keeping me down there, and it turned out this guy, Troy Neal, they pulled him back. They didn't let him play because they wanted to make sure he won the batting title. So when they knew I couldn't win the batting title, then I got called up. Well, so I knew it was coming, but I had no expectations. Again, the major leagues seemed a million miles away back then. It's not like today. These kids, they're coming out of high school. They're expecting to be in big leagues in 4 years. I mean, it just didn't seem like that for us back then. Major leaguers seemed so much older. They seemed like our dads, right? And I'm playing at Calgary, fly across country, going to New York to meet the team. And the whole time I'm thinking, am I going to be playing tonight? I have no idea. I mean, no communication. Like, you just didn't understand what was going to happen. I mean, at the time, again, I just didn't have any reference points. Now we see them all over with all the young kids. But at the time, there wasn't many young players getting called up like that. So anyway, I get in the Yankee Stadium. I show up at 5:30. Batting practice has already started, and I come in the locker room, dump, hey, here's your uniform, go get dressed, go get a few hits in. I'm like, swings in, and I'm like, okay. So then I go from there. I'm getting dressed, and the manager, at the time they had the bus crash, so Buck Rogers was the manager, John Wathen was the manager, and he says, hey, he goes, Tim, nice to meet you. He goes, hey, come in my office before you go to the field. So I go in this office. He goes, hey, congratulations, great year. He goes, I think you've been hitting, cleanup all year. Well, we got you hitting cleanup again tonight. And I'm like, okay, so I guess I'm playing. Now it's like
you're up. You better get in there.
It's 6 o'clock, and so I ran down. My good friend Chad Curtis at the time, he was up. It was his rookie year. Run down, get probably 10 swings in batting practice, and then go right into the scrum, which is what you saw, on the top steps of Yankee Stadium. And here's this minor league prospect. I mean, across the whole minor leagues. I mean, so there's a lot of media there, and I mean, literally had time to go back and change. Come back out, national anthem, the game starting, and it was just like my head was spinning. So, but my first at bat, I mean, as soon as I got in the on deck circle, everything just slowed down. That was the first time the whole day my mind was at rest. And my first at bat, I was very comfortable, very relaxed, and I pretty much was when I played the game that night, and from then on. And
it would stay that way all through a rookie season the following year, where you were Rookie of the Year for the Angels. How much do you feel like maybe that experience late August and September the year before helps you going into the next season?
Well, it was huge. I mean, and at the time there was much more development in younger players, right? I mean, I've talked about it, the 1,500 at-bats. Well, I had to get my 1,500 at-bats, but I had 2 injuries along the way too. I got hit in the face twice, so I had some seasons messed up. So that whole season, I look back and everybody says, oh, if you were on another team, you might have come up in July or at the All-Star break. The Angels kept me there all the way till almost the end of August. And to me, I think that was a blessing. Number one, I did everything I could do in AAA. I knew there was nothing left for me to do. These kids coming up today, they don't know if they're ready, honestly. I mean, they're some guys come up with, great numbers in the minor leagues and like, all right, I've stamped the minor leagues, I'm ready for the big leagues, but most don't. And I kind of was in that position where I knew, okay, this is the next step. I've proven there's nothing left for me in the minor leagues. So that was very much an awesome thing. And then going to the big leagues for that last month, just kind of getting a feel for it. I mean, I didn't hit well. I think maybe hit 220 or I don't know if I hit even 200. But anyway, but you see that a lot. I mean, those September call-ups, you're just kind of getting the feel for facing the best in the game, right? Every series you're always facing a number one, which are better than the guys you would face in the minor leagues. So there's a little bit of that going on. And but yeah, going into spring training that next year, knowing that, hey, it's my job, we're going young, and having that little bit of an experience the previous year was awesome.
You talk about going young and what was built with this team. And I know a lot of people are wanting to make a leap as to what is happening maybe now with the Angels and the 25U crew. But I'd be curious to know, about that group that came up with the Angels that ultimately would win the World Series in 2002, some of the building blocks that happened along the way. Who were some of those key people, and how did so much of that come together?
Well, out of the gate, I mean, there were some guys that were part of that building block that ended up not being with us for the World Series, but they were pieces that were used to get us the other pieces, right? So, I mean, I go back to Chad Curtis was a good friend of mine, Troy Percival, Garrett Anderson, Jimmy Edmonds. Jimmy Edmonds brought in Bottenfield and Adam Kennedy, there at the stretch. So, Damien Easley was there. Some of the Erstad came a couple years later, but there was very much a sense in the minor leagues with the Angels, and I'm missing a few pitchers there, where it was definitely about building the youth and building that stable of young players that could come up, and then you could augment them with the varsity guys around them, and I think we've kind of, like you said, maybe gotten away from that a little bit, over the last however many years. I think there was a period of time where this organization was chasing championships, and they maybe traded a few guys away out of the cupboards that could have been helpful along the way. But at that period of time, I mean, the Angels, go back to '86, they lost the one-game playoff. Well, that was an all-star team. That was pretty much, Mr. Autry was going out buying every free agent he could. Well, '86, '87, '88, they started kind of petering out, and then by the time the early '90s came around, it was like, okay, we need to rebuild this whole thing. And that was fortunate for us because you didn't see a lot of that going on. The Atlanta Braves had done it, and now it was the Angels' turn, and we just kind of came up and started bringing all these young kids up. And I think '93, that roster, I mean, Gary DiSarcina at shortstop, Damien Easley, JT Snow, which we got in a trade for Jimmy Abbott, and then, around the outfield is all young. Well, Luis Polonia was there. Was it '92 or not? Anyway. But you could see that there was this move with the young players, and then they started adding in the big pieces like Chili Davis, and you had a couple big, horses in the stable, and Mark Langston and Chuck Finley as well. So, I think that's kind of. I think I answered your question, but that's what it was kind of like back then.
Well, did you guys ever talk about hey, we think that this could be a championship team. We got the pieces here. Did you and Erstad ever have those kind of conversations about what was kind of filling in here when you get in maybe to the middle, later part of the '90s, going into what would be an incredible decade in the 2000s?
So I'll start with this. Joe Madden, when we're in the minor leagues, at every level, his saying was, it was so awesome. He'd always say, look, you play these teams now, you beat them now. These are the same guys you're going to be beating when you're in the big leagues. And if they've been beaten by you in the minor leagues, they're going to be beaten by you in the big leagues. And, let them get used to losing to you guys. And, instructional league was always the Oakland A's, the Seattle Mariners, Texas Rangers. Anyway, we had a bunch of, so that mindset was really pressed upon the minor league players back then. And, at time, you're kind of looking up like, wait, we're going to play in the big leagues someday? It was kind of hard to swallow. But within a blink of an eye, you're in the big leagues, and you're playing the Oakland A's, and there's Scott Brocious. There's, so-and-so. You're looking around going, those are the guys. Yeah, they were just there with us. So there was that mindset that was kind of built. It was just kind of built upon all the minor leaguers that were coming through the system. And it was always aimed towards, hey, you're going to be the first team that brings this organization a championship. And I always remember Joe Madden saying those kinds of things. That's why it was so special in '02 when we won to have Joe Madden there with it, because it was like he had been preaching it for 20 plus years prior to this, and now we're all standing on the podium together, celebrating the championship.
Of course, there's that iconic image of you carrying the trophy around Angel Stadium after winning the World Series in 2002. We're going to get there, but I want to rewind for a second. Yeah. Let's go back to that spring training and that 2002 season. Were there ever any moments where maybe you felt like this team, which I know you guys got off to that awful start that year, but were there moments along the way where you felt like maybe this could be a building block of maybe being something of unity and teamwork? Because there was so much made about that team in particular. What do you remember about that?
Well, okay, yeah, it's always easy to say, we knew we were a championship team from the beginning. We didn't. Actually, the organization hadn't. I was the longest tenured player that had never been to a playoff game. So it's kind of like Mike Trout today. Unless you're bringing guys in from other organizations that have experienced it, the guys that have been here, we never experienced it. So there was not this sense of, this is what we have. Now, Mike Scioscia and his staff, though, had been there.
Right.
And they, I go back to 2000, we knew we had something. We had a big year, but then 2001, a couple injuries, the wheels fell off. But coming in 2002, everybody's like, hey, we got the pieces. And Soch was always so positive. He's like, I believe in you guys. I know that we have a championship caliber club, blah, 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 all this stuff. And I honestly believe as players, the ones that have been coming up, we're all kind of like, okay, if you say so. I mean, it was a little bit of that, but you trusted the leadership and you trusted him saying, hey, we're going to focus one pitch at a time, one out at a time, one inning at a time, one day at a time. I mean, he narrowed it down to like, look, your job is to focus on that next pitch, whether you're on the mound or at the plate. Your job is that. You focus on the next pitch. Don't get caught up in all the other stuff. And I really thought that was something unique in what he did that was special, is he got your focus where it needs to be. I mean, you can't play this game worried about other things that you can't control around you. And he really got our focus in the right place. And he always was, making the proclamation that, hey, we have a championship team. We have a championship caliber team. And then, of course, like you said, we kind of got off to a bad start. Yeah. But the side story on that, we had a brawl in the spring, and we had like 6 guys that were doing suspensions the first
I was hoping you were going to bring that up, by the way, Fish.
Yeah, and I didn't. I kind of forgot about that until our reunion, and some guys were talking. I mean, Troy Gloss, Spezio, Aaron Celia. We had a bunch of guys that had to serve suspension. So we were kind of going with one arm behind our back out of the gates anyway. Yeah. If there's an excuse to be made, there it is. Yeah. But nonetheless, once we got everybody back, the club that Bill Stoneman and Mike Socha put together were very much blue-collar guys that said, when they said, hey, you keep your eye on, the grindstone here, these guys did it. And we didn't, we had the blinders on. We were not focused on all the other things. We weren't focused on, ourselves and promoting ourselves. It was all about getting my job done. If I do my job, I'm trusting that the other guys will do theirs. And at the end, hopefully we'll win. And I really believe that was a unique situation where we had, for the most part, a team of guys that thought like that.
Meanwhile, as that season progresses, you guys start playing really good baseball, and you go on a big run of your own. At the same time, in your division, you got the Oakland A's winning 20 straight games that year, always kind of chasing that. You end up getting the wild card, but you go into that series against the mighty Yankees in the start of the playoffs there in the ALDS. Obviously, they had been coming off of their giant run, had just lost in the World Series the year before. Yep. What was that time like of being just kind of this ragtag bunch that's trying to put it together against this great Yankee team in the heart of the dynasty?
Yeah, and let's go back to that September, because we were fighting for that wild card berth all the way to the end. And, Moneyball was created with that Oakland A's team, right? That's the whole Moneyball thing. Right. And they were an all-star team. So, yeah, they had reason to win. It wasn't because of Moneyball. It's because those guys had an all-star team.
They were very good.
They were very good. They had the 3-headed monster in the starting rotation, the bullpen, superstars everywhere. But we were chasing them. And, we were grinding it out, and it was almost like when we clinched in Texas, it was like a huge sigh of relief. But you know what? We had been tested. I mean, we had been put in the fire. We'd been tested, and we kind of knew what it took to win. And that season, getting to that point, for us, it was like we didn't have to turn a light switch on. We rolled right into the playoffs with that mindset. And so when we went up against the Yankees, right out of the gate, we're like, hey, bring on the best. I mean, we might as well find out right now. And that was very much the mindset. And, there's a little bit of you like, okay, the Yankee mystique and all this kind of stuff. But if you go back to the 90s, there was really one team that kind of had the Yankees number, and it was us. And why? Because we kind of played their game. The Yankees were very much, blinders on, nose on the ball, kind of team. And we matched them. And I've talked to a lot of Yankee players since then, and they always said, like, you guys were like our mirror images. I mean, it was like, and I think we went into that game, I don't think, as intimidated. And we just went out and played our game. We let the chips fall where they might. But again, I think it comes back to trusting the leadership, trusting Soch. They're going to make the right moves. They're going to hit the right buttons. Mickey Hatcher, oh my gosh, our hitting coach. I just hear him saying, all right, guys, here's your hitting. We're going to tee it high and let it fly. Guys, just let it hang out. Don't leave everything on the table. It wasn't like, okay, 2-0 count, 3. Mickey was not like that. Mickey was the rah, get you through the locker room, out, you're going to run through a wall for him. And so I think it was a combination of all that allowed us to go into that Yankee series. And I gotta admit, it was October in New York, and there's an aura, mystique about it. That first game, you felt it. But then after that first game, it was like, okay, back to business. And, we ended up taken it. I'm so glad we didn't have to go back. we took care of business at home, right?
Yeah.
But there was a point where it was like, hey, if we don't take care of business, we're going to have to go back to New York, and it's going to be tough. So I'm glad we didn't have to go back. But nonetheless, I mean, hey, you might as well get out of the gates against the best team out there.
Was that win in Game 4 of the ALDS, did that maybe validate of the feelings that maybe we have something going here?
I think so. I mean, when you knock off a team, you're the complete underdog, right? I mean, you got nothing to lose. So I think that was helpful. And you're going up against a team. I just remember like the last couple innings or maybe the last inning. I just remember, feeling like, I think we had a big lead at that point. And I'm looking at their dugout and I'm looking at all those superstars and they're just like, is this really what's going to happen? We're going out in the first round it was here at Angel Stadium. And I just remember thinking, wow, this is amazing. We just knocked off the Yanks, I mean, so it was pretty cool. And I do think that it just, the energy and the excitement of winning and bringing it all together, I think that just continued to build in that momentum. I mean, we had the momentum the whole month of September and it just continued to carry in October. And you talk about teams getting hot. Yeah, they get hot for a week or two, but that team was just a mixture of hot and steady and just grinding it out, and I think that's what carried us all the way through.
Then able to take care of business against the Minnesota Twins. So I think I forgot, that was a good team, Minnesota. That was a really good team that kind of gets lost in the Angels story, but AK hits the 3 home runs, and then it's off to the Fall Classic. And Angels in the World Series for the first time in franchise history, going up against Barry Bonds and everything on that team. There is that very famous clip of you, by the way. I mean, I know you know about it. Yeah. That's the furthest ball I've ever seen hit that Barry hit. What do you remember about the start of that World Series and knowing who you were facing and also knowing that, you know what, we're a pretty darn good team ourselves?
Yeah, it was pretty exciting. I mean, honestly, at that point, we've been not only battle-tested for the season, we've kind of been battle-tested through the playoffs. So we get to the postseason, or into the World Series, there was a lot of excitement. It was just like, I mean, you're just on a high, going into it. One of the things I remember is playing late October in Anaheim here. I mean, it's almost starting to be fall, wintry, there's like, there's always like a mist in the air. It was like the stadium transformed into something I don't really recall it being, and the other thing too is the out-of-town scoreboard. One game.
Yeah.
I mean, so those are the things that really stood out right away. It's like, wow, we are like the last men standing right here. And that was really pretty cool. Outside of that, I mean, of course, there's all kinds of World Series memories that go with that. But I do recall just the energy, the crowd, the Thundersticks, the Rally Monkey, all that stuff was just, it created an atmosphere that I had never experienced before.
Then in Game 2, obviously, the Tim Salmon game. The 2 home runs you hit that day. Going into that one, what'd you have for breakfast that day? Because I think I want to have that every day the rest of my life. But really, what was that moment like to be able not just to hit that homer in the second, but then that late home run that ended up proving to be the game winner? I mean, what an incredible time. That has to be the greatest game of your life.
It was. Yeah, that is. I mean, that's my, when I was a little kid and I'd listen to the World Series games and I'd go out in my backyard and I'd visualize hitting against certain guys. I had my moment. And that's something I think every player would love to have, is that crowning achievement moment in a World Series game. I had it. What's interesting is I think we lost the first game of every series that playoff run. So, again, we lose the first game. So we come back the second game and it's like, you hate to say you feel pressure, but it's like, okay, like everything's on the table here. You can't afford this. And so to be able to have a game where, and listen, I shined, I got my hits and all that for sure. But there was other guys around me doing stuff that allowed me to drive them in and putting, it was a team effort. I don't know what the final score was, but we scored a lot of runs. But yes, I did have a big part in that. It was great to see our team respond again in Game 2. That was probably the biggest thing. We'd always, if we had our backs up against the wall or we got beat down one day, that team always responded the next day. And again, it was just kind of like, okay, here we go. We responded. Did I have a bigger part in that? Maybe I did. I mean, it was definitely a crowning moment in my career for sure. But when you go back and you look at all of our wins going through that World Series, every guy, there was like every guy on that roster had their opportunity, had their moment to shine that really, made it a team effort to win that whole thing.
Coming back to Anaheim, down 3-2 in the World Series, knowing it's been this incredible season, but also knowing that, gosh, you could be all over if we don't win tomorrow. What were some of the emotions in that time while you're trying to stay focused? You're trying to, this is maybe the best chance you'll ever have in your career to do something like this. How much pressure were you feeling at that time?
Well, it's interesting because I was really, you get to that point, it's fun. You just want the next game to come. You're just like, and then we get pounded in San Fran. And that was the first time it was like, whoa, okay. It could be over in one more game. And I think the flight home, because we all had our wives with us flying home, and that was the first time, the plane was quiet. And I think everybody was reflecting on the same thing, like, whoa, okay, this has been a great run. It would suck to come this far and to lose it, like this. And I'll never forget driving out of the parking lot here and winding around on the freeway, getting on the 57 South, going past the Big A, and it's not lit up, going home at 2 o'clock in the morning. And I'm stuck in this thought of like, wow, okay. And my wife turns to me at 2 o'clock. She goes, it's really going to suck if we came all this way only to go home losers. And I was like, yep, you said it exactly what I think everybody's thinking. But that's how, everybody, the fans that experienced, we all felt it. My wife was feeling it. My wife still says it was the best. The World Series victory was the most amazing thing she's ever experienced, and she's birthed 4 children. So again, the pressure and everything that went with it, everybody was feeling it. And there was my wife at 2 o'clock in the morning voicing to me, and I'm like, yeah, you're exactly right. So it was pressure. Coming back that next was pressure packed.
Hold up, Fish, this explains everything. Now we know the magic behind all of this was just making sure you didn't disappoint Marcy.
That's right.
That's what.
Let me tell you what. My wife, hey, behind every good player is a great woman. I believe it. My wife broke down every at bat of every game during that season and every season I played. At 12 o'clock at night. So she was with me on this ride for sure. So, but it takes a strong woman at home.
2 nights later, you're lifting.
Oh, wait a minute.
Okay.
2 nights, you're going to skip game 6?
Well, we're going to talk to Scott Spiezio about this.
Okay.
Fine. No, I want to hear. Okay, we can't skip game 6. It's the best game. It's the best game.
Well,
in the
you
history
just
of the franchise.
you talked about all the pressure and everything, and then going to the game.
All right, okay, here we go.
Yeah.
7th inning, down 5-0.
Yeah.
And trying to make something happen.
Yeah, it was. You had that sense. Here was Ortiz, who we hit in game 2 really well, and all of a sudden he's shut us out, right?
Well, okay. So when Dusty comes out, and takes the ball away,
I know.
But as a hitter, are you like, okay, good? This is.
Well, to me, I had struck out the inning before looking on a inside cutter that I questioned was a strike. Anyway, so I was down below watching the video, and when all this is transpiring, and so I'm not even really. I'm still kind of focused on, that last at bat, and, he takes him out of the game, and I did not even see him give him the ball. I didn't see any of that stuff. So to me, it's like a lot's been made of it, and I'm not to say that there was guys on the bench that maybe knew about it, but for me, I was so focused in on my part of the game that it wasn't really motivation for me necessarily, but hey, it's a great story.
Yeah, for sure. Where were you when Spiezio hit the homer?
So again, I was down below because that was that whole inning, right? And then Spiezio, and then they took Ortiz out and they brought in Rodriguez, and I believe that was the classic at bat. And I'm watching it downstairs, and he's fouling pitches off, and then he hits a home run. And when he hit it, we're like, did he get it? And we watch it in his home run. And Brad Fulmer, who was a cage rat, Brad Fulmer was right next to me, and he hits me. He goes, it's on. We're back into this. And everybody went flying up, and I was like, oh my gosh. The magic just kind of rekindled, right? So it was pretty special. That home run definitely sparked it and gave us life again. And the rest is history, right?
So did you just run up to the dugout?
Oh, yeah. I can remember being in that little video room, where it's at. And yeah, me and Fulmer were right next to each other, and he comes in, he grabs me, he's like, we're back into this. We go running back up and, mob Spies as he comes in. So it was pretty. And of course, again, they talk about the 12th man in football or whatever. These Angel fans in that moment were just so powerful. They don't have any, unless you were there, you have no idea how much that fan support interaction really is. It was I mean, the noise was just monstrous. It was just so powerful, and it really energizes you in those moments. So it was pretty special.
I would imagine Game 7 is a memory that you'll also have forever, but I would love to know the feeling of the pressure of that game. It's a tight game all the way through. And then when Erstad does make the catch and it's over and you guys are champions, what was the first thought that went through your mind when he caught that baseball?
I was relieved. I mean, quite honestly, because again, Alex Ochoa, we traded for, he was coming and playing defense for me in the 9th inning. And again, that's why the Bonds home run, I really hadn't seen many home runs from the dugout. So yeah, from that vantage point, seeing where I'm like, I was making an honest truth, or a statement, because I'm usually out there in right field watching them go over my head. I don't really know how far they go. But anyway, that last inning, I'm actually on the bench. And my season is over. I'd pinch hit, or I think I hit, or whatever my last at bat, I'm out of the game, Ochoa's in. And I'm telling you what, there was this sense of like my season's over. This is over. There's no tomorrow. There's no next. I mean, like my season is over. Now I'm a fan. And then I got super nervous because I have no stake in the game. There's nothing I can do for the outcome of the game. And it was so hard to watch at that moment, knowing that all that kind of came together like that. And then when Percy's on the mound pitching, and I know Percy doesn't like me to say this, but there was only one team that ever had his number. It was the Cleveland Indians. And they just, whatever, sign stealing, whatever it was, they had his number, and they had big hits off him. And the last out with a runner on base was Kenny Lofton at the plate, who had been in those years with Cleveland, and nobody on the bench. I mean, I just remember, looking everybody on the top step, and I'm pacing behind, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the last guy I want to see at the plate. I guarantee there was nobody on that bench that knew what I knew, that knew what I was concerned about. And which is great, but I guarantee you there might have been between me, Percy, and Erstad. Yeah. We're the only ones that we know what, oh my gosh, Kenny Lofton, this is the guy he's got to face right here. And so when he hit that last fly ball, when it went off the bat at the trajectory, my heart stopped for a minute. And my eyes immediately went to Erstad, and then I see Erstad settling under it, and then it was like, okay, there's one guy on the planet that will never drop a ball. It's Darin Erstad. So, again, it went from like my heart stopping to just totally, jubilation, whatever. It was just, it's one of those lifetime experiences. You'll never replicate it in anything you do the rest of your life.
We all know, I mean, you're the Kingfish, Mr. Angel. We know that you're supposed to end up with that trophy when you're walking around the stadium. But what's the story behind that? I would think that could be kind of a long walk.
Yeah, it was kind of funny. It was like, we had been outside, then came inside, then went outside, and then came inside. And I remember I was inside, and somebody was saying, oh, the fans are still out there. And so I was going to run back out there. And Scioscia's office was right there. And I remember Scioscia saying, Fish, take this. And I was like, okay. So I took it out there, and I run out there, and I go in front of the dugout, and I hold it up. And there was like nobody to hand it off to, and the fans, and I just kind of started moving down the line. And the more I did it, I mean, I realized that I had to keep going. It kind of reminded me of the whole Cal Ripken thing as I'm doing it. I'm like, okay, wait a minute, where am I going to stop? I guess I'm not. I'm going to have to. So I'm holding it the whole way, and then all of a sudden the media throng comes around me, and the cameras, they're in front of me, and all I kept thinking was, do not trip me. Because if I trip me, this is going to be the most famous lawn dart you've ever seen, right? Because it's heavy. I mean, you're holding like this. You played a long season, a long game. I mean, and I ran around the whole field. And I remember, it's so funny because Scott Shields and Sean Wooten, it's our own little private little thing going. But I came around third base, and these guys kind of hooked up with me at that point, and they're kind of running with me. And I'm like, one of you take this trophy. I can't hold it anymore. And so there's a picture of me with Shieldsy and Wooten, and I'm kind of handing it off to them. And that was pretty funny. That's like kind of they're like, hey, Fish, thanks for doing that, because they all got their picture, with holding the trophy out in the field. So if you see that picture, just know that Shieldsy and Wooten they're really appreciative of that moment. But yeah, I was exhausted running around, but that was just kind of a spur of the moment thing. And you know what? Actually, I take that back a little bit, because I think during it was at the American League Championship. Mm-hmm. I think I did run around the field, but I think I was with some other guys, and we went around with a trophy or something like that. So maybe it was just, and my memory's not great right now. I'm trying to think. Maybe it was a little bit more thought out. Maybe that's why Scioscia told me to take the trophy. So I don't know. we'll go with whatever.
Sure. Well, what your account is the one we're going to go with. So that's what we'll take. I mean, that amazing team, amazing moment. I thought it was so special a few years ago for the 20th anniversary, having so many of those guys back. I was amazed, and I've gotten to know a bunch of you just doing this and being around, and I seeing the interactions of the guys getting back together. I know sometimes they're close. Scott Spezia was here the other night. Yeah, that was. But it seems like that team, championship teams, seem to stay together, and it's almost like no matter where everybody else is in their lives, you still will always have that. What was?
Yeah, it was.
What's it like having that?
Well, I tell you, Artie was awesome. He put together an event for us, and he put us all up at Pelican Hill in the suite, and we had like 2 or 3 nights in golf together. When you have a band of brothers that you've been to the mountaintop, you actually, we'd been in the trenches the year before to the mountaintop. No matter what kind of friends you were during the course of the season, you all have your little cliques and friendships. There's always that connection point. And 20 years later, we come together, and it was like we'd never left. I mean, we're looking at guys 20 years older, but we're all kind of feeling like, hey, didn't we just do this yesterday? I mean, it was really amazing. And then to get the guys together and, everybody's vantage point, like we're talking my vantage point of everything, right? Well, you talk to Spees, and to see it through his eyes, or to see it through AK's eyes, or Erstie's eyes, or Percy's eyes. That's what made what happened a few years ago so special, because we sat around, drinking and smoking cigars and on the golf course and whatever, and everybody had their little moment to, hey, remember during this, and you're like, oh my gosh, that's how I found out about the brawl and the suspensions. I totally forgot about that. But it was, that's what makes that group of guys so special, is that I don't care till we all die, until we go to the grave. If we ever get together, we always have that unique bond, and it's a special bond to have. I'm very blessed to be able to say that I not only achieved, personally the success that I was able to achieve and have that experience with a group of guys, but that we did it for an organization. It was their very first one, and for a community, and for Orange County, and for Anaheim, and everything, Angel Nation, for whatever. I mean, it was just so special to be able to do that and be a part of the very first one for everybody.
I'll never forget the car flags around town everywhere. There was red everywhere.
They painted the town red.
Yes. Yeah.
It definitely was painted red. I do recall that. I mean, I lived up in Tustin Ranch. We would go to the Vaughn's or whatever it was like red was everywhere. Yeah. Everybody had the little things in their cars, and, it was really special to be a part of that. And I always think about that when you hear about teams winning championships and they go back home for their parade and all that, and I'm like, was it as good as ours? Because ours was pretty special.
I don't think so. This one was different.
Yeah, I mean, the crowd in front of the stadium under the hats, and then we went to Disneyland on the fire trucks, and all. I mean, I guess maybe ticker tape in downtown Manhattan might be pretty special, but listen, that was an amazing experience for us.
Shifting gears here, and thank you for sharing those stories, because I mean it's incredible just to hear it through your eyes. Tim, one thing that has blown me away is your transition now into doing broadcasting. And I'm blown away because we spend time together every single night, and we sit in the booth and we talk baseball. The amount of homework and the prep and the studying and the commitment to being great at this. I know that you worked with a guy, Lou Riggs, who I worked with at one point. Yeah. And to go all in on this, it seems like maybe that's just a little bit a part of you. If you're going to do it, you might as well do it right. But I mean, is that the mentality?
Yeah.
Because going into you've become a really good broadcaster.
Well, thanks. I always grade myself in the same, like, you've heard me say this, like, well, tonight I was 1 for 4, in the pregame show, or hey, postgame I was 4 for 4 tonight. It's like I really had it going. I still take that same, tenacity and my prep work that I did as a player. I take it to heart, and I probably over prep for what I'm doing. It's not like I'm doing 9 innings and I have to have all this, but I have enough information. I could talk for 9 innings if I have to. But the reality is that that's just the way I'm built. I mean, I'm going to go into it. I'm not going to cut corners. I'm always going to do more than I think is anticipated, because I always want to feel like at the end of the day, regardless of the job I did or how it's presented, I know I can look myself in the mirror and say, hey, I did everything I could. And that was as a player, and now it's in my post career, which is almost as long or longer than it was as a player. So time is flying here. But yeah, that's just the way I go about it. And I like to think that I have good insight, and, I can, I think part of it is the discussions we have with you and Langer and Gooby and the guys behind the scenes that, it helps kind of shape your thoughts or maybe what your talking points are for sure. But yeah, without a doubt, I mean, I don't just roll through this. And like you said, Lou Riggs and some of my early mentors said, hey, you're going to get a 1 year pass by the fans, but after that, you can't just, you have to bring something to the table. So hopefully I'm doing that.
I think the Angel fans know you absolutely are, and I am appreciative of the honorary PhD in baseball I've gotten hitting from you, pitching from Mark Langston every single night. I mean, it's amazing, and I think Angel fans get to hear that on the air all the time. If you're really paying attention, it's great stuff. You've also spent some time coaching. I know you took a lot of pride in the success that you had, winning championships in Arizona with your high school team, spending some time in spring training with this Angel group. How much do you love the opportunity to give back to the game as a teacher?
Well, I love teaching. I love coaching. I love teaching. If the major leagues wasn't such a marathon of a season, I might be back doing it. But it's high school baseball, amateur stuff. I coached all my kids through Little League and Pop Warner, and I coached every sport. So I feel like regardless of the sport, you can be a mentor to young men. And that's really what it comes down, teaching them character, tenacity, integrity, teamwork, mental toughness, physical toughness, all those things that I learned and made me who I was. It's like, okay, I don't want to go to the grave with it. I feel like I need to pass it on to somebody. And you see I get pretty excited, right? And we start, we see things on the field. I'm like, oh, I wish I could, whatever. It's like, because I think there is a little bit of that passing of the baton, that torch. And when I came up, I was so thankful. I had guys around me that felt the same way. I had a Chili Davis that, he didn't care about his performance as much as he did about making the guys around him better. It's like, boy, the things I learned from guys like that, or a Rod Carew, I'm looking at his jersey right here, Rod Carew, or even a Chuck Finley, about, character and toughness. I had guys around me that I learned a lot from, and it's exciting to kind of give it back. And, you never know when those teaching moments are going to be, and all of a sudden I find myself saying something, I'm like, boy, I just sound like Mike Scioscia right there. Or that was a Joe Madden line, or that was a, Chili Davis line. I find myself in those moments all the time. So it's pretty exciting to teach.
You ever think about managing?
Like high school again?
No. Here. No. Maybe not here.
Yeah.
In Major League Baseball.
You know what? I have my moments at times, but we've talked about this. It's a grind. It's a mental grind. I have so much going on in my life outside of this game. To have to put everything on hold and give everything up, it's just a cost right now that I just couldn't make. I've always said it'd be great to be in a what's the term, like a
like an advisor,
or something, or on the outside looking in or something like that. But I love going to spring training for a couple weeks. I went down the dugout last year for a month. That was fun. But after a month, I'm kind of like, 2 road trips. I'm like, gosh, I don't want to do this anymore. So I think I have something to pass along. I think there's a ton of great wisdom in the guys like myself that have played. And, none of those guys are really around the game. They're really outside of the game now. It's a whole different teaching or coaching culture out there. And with analytics, you have to be up to speed with analytics. And so, I know there's a lot of guys out there that love to teach and coach, and they are probably doing it at the little league and amateur levels and things like that. But, I do believe there's definitely something you could take from this vast community of former big leaguers that have had success at the highest level and know how to play the game. They definitely could have an impact. And how that I got to that, when you asked me if I'd ever want to manage, listen, it's always one of those dreams, but you know what? It's just the cost would be a lot.
I appreciate the candor. I appreciate the honesty. One thing that we always talk about in the booth, I love hearing you break down hitting. And we don't need to go too deep in this, but to the fans that have hung with us.
Wait, as soon as you ask the question, you're at risk of me going too deep.
Well, the fans that have been here this long, I think, are so into it, they would want to know how you view at-bats. I know that you've always been someone you like to sit slider. Is that kind of the thought? Or how do you approach an at-bat? What was your approach going to the plate?
Well, my approach going to the plate is, okay, I'm fully aware of what my strengths are. And then the key is doing your homework and knowing what his strengths are. And the cat and mouse. Listen, this game has become so robotic in a way that I don't know if guys think about the cat and mouse. I know the good players do, because I'll hear interviews and they'll say things. But there's a cat and mouse going on. And it's about, well, that's what statistics is. Right? All the analytics is about trying to figure out what pitch this guy's going to throw. So for me, there's that cat and mouse of the game. I was always trying to figure out, okay, what's this guy going to throw in this situation? So my homework was always, hey, is this a guy that's going to go hard in these situations or soft in these situations? You know, what's the scenario that I'm going to be in? I was a good off-speed hitter. I mean, I think most major leaguers in my time, the good ones, they all could hit off speed. You had to be able to hit off speed. To me, if you're a one-trick pony, which is a fastball-only hitter, you're going to be exposed. And so I learned how to hit off speed, and I enjoyed hitting off speed. But what I did is, and what you hear me talking about all the time is, there's situations in the game where you can throw all the analytics. That guy on the mound, he's going to be terrified to throw you a fastball over the plate. And in those situations, you got to be, as a hitter, because you're all amped up, right? And when you're amped up, you want to hit the fastball. It's like you got to back off and say, the likelihood of him giving me this fastball probably isn't very good. So when he flips over that get me over pitch, whatever it is, are you ready for it? And I always come back to, when I evaluate my at-bats and I go back and I scouted somebody, I always said, hey, they're going to make one or two they're going to make one mistake over the middle of the plate, maybe two. You might get two if you're lucky. When I'm taking those mistakes over the middle of the plate and I'm not swinging at them, why wasn't I swinging at them? What was my mindset? And my mindset usually was I wasn't in the right frame of mind here. So to me, that's how I was evaluated at bat. It's like, hey, if I'm going to evaluate this guy and I'm watching him pitch, where does he make his most mistakes with runners in scoring position? And vast majority, I don't care who you are, the greats, the Roger Clemens, the Pedros, all those guys, maybe not the first pitch, but they're going to throw something off speed for a strike. And most hitters pass on those because they're so geared up for that fastball. And as some of our young hitters are starting to find out, you're seeing some of their success in these situations. Joe Adell, I think the last game here at home, hit the 3-run homer on a slider, a 2-2 or 3-2 slider. Tip your hat. Way to go, Joe. I mean, again, because in those moments, hitters tend to become fastball-only hitters. So that gives you a little bit of a insight into what I'm thinking. But we could go a lot deeper, but I'm not.
We can go a lot deeper.
So I'm not just a slider hitter. I'm just saying, slider's a great pitch to hit. If they're throwing it over the middle of the plate, be ready to hit it.
But if you get okay, so 1-0 count, 78% of the time this guy likes to throw a fastball. Does that mean anything to you?
Well, in the context of what? I mean, to David Eckstein or to me? I mean, it's like, again, you got to take those numbers and apply them. Is that to the guy that doesn't have any, threat in his bat, or the guy that has threat in his bat? So to me, listen, if it's a new pitcher I've never faced, I might rely on that stuff. But I've 10, 12 years in the big league, I faced so many of these guys. I know what their book is, and they know what their, Yeah. But so it's a little bit more that cat and mouse, and it's like, okay, I'm going to be paying attention during the course of the game. Is he able to throw a slider and curveball over for a strike? Because if he's not throwing it, well, then you can almost discount it and say, okay, now it might be a fastball. But again, that's the thinking part of the game. And Rod Carew, who I keep looking at, Rod would always say, trust your hands, and he'd always be talking about, how's this guy trying to get you out? How's this Chili Davis? What's this guy trying to do to you in this situation? Because they're not just up there, Iron Mike, throwing pitches. Every situation is a whole different mindset. They have a strategy for getting you out. And what's so obvious about that is because on our pitching side of things, that's exactly what they're doing to the opposing hitters. So why wouldn't it be good for us as hitters to be thinking that, what are they thinking about us? It's like, I don't know. Sometimes it's so simple. It's right in front of you, right? But I think with analytics, again, analytics is great. There's a lot of great information. But I think sometimes with analytics, you can turn the mind off a little bit and you stop thinking. You just, oh, okay, he's going to throw it 78. I'll sit on it. Well, maybe. What's the situation telling you? What's your background with this guy telling you? So I think there's a little bit of, the hitter has got to have some of that intuitiveness to him during the course of a game and history with guys to be able to make those adjustments.
We always talk about wanting to do a fish talk on camera. Ladies and gentlemen, you just got fish talk. This is just a normal day in the booth before a game.
Yeah.
Tim Salmon, thank you so much. I can't thank you enough for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Trent, it's awesome. And gosh, we could go on for another half hour. We'll have to do another one someday. But no, you're right. I mean, fish talk is awesome. I really enjoy bouncing my ideas off and you and Langer, and we have a great time every night.
Thanks, Fish.
Yeah.
See you.
All right.
Thanks for joining us on the Under the Halo podcast. If you want to check out any other episodes of the Under the Halo podcast, if you're watching on YouTube right now, we'll continue to check out youtube.com/angels. Maybe you're going to be on the road driving and you can only listen. Well, an audio-only podcast is available as well. You go to angels.com/podcast to check that out, or download and subscribe wherever you're getting your podcasts already. Again, my name is Trent Rush. Thanks for hanging out with us on the Under the Halo podcast.